So, everybody, I want to thank you so much for coming tonight and for joining this weekend, this conference. It's very exciting. I'm really thrilled to be putting this on, and I'm so thrilled that people are actually joining me for my weekend's activities. So, thank you again. And for tonight, we're basically practicing our signing up for the webinar technology. I'm going to do a bit of a review about the conference, a little jumpstart, talk about the Community Cats podcast, and we're all going to train you on the process for how to do some raffles and trivia questions, cat trivia questions. So I hope we're going to have fun. We're also going to do some introductions and sharing amongst each other as the next 2 hours go on. So this is more of a free form type of evening where during the Saturday and Sunday, it's going to be more strict, like webinar presentations. Some of the questions that I have been getting have been, will you get recordings of the presentations? And yes, everybody's going to have access to recordings of the presentations afterwards, after the conference. And we will also have a password protected section of our website that will have all the PowerPoint presentations or the slide presentations for all the presentations during the weekend, so you'll have access to those slides at a later date. There are a couple of speakers that have some videos and they have some handouts. Those you'll have access to the handouts during the presentation, and the videos we'll figure out a way to get those posted up for you too. All right. So here we are. We have our 2018 online cat conference, and this logo was created by Kristen. And she did a fantastic job and we love it. And so if you like anything that you see graphically, it's a big, huge thank you to Kristen Petrie at Malarium Graphics. And you can always reach her through support at communitycatspodcast.com. The podcast, the conference, the website, everything would not happen without her. So I want to be putting a huge shout out for her because this would not be happening without her.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so we are doing ready, set, go. So we are officially launched and now we are jumping in to our conference. So I wanted to let folks know that we have 2 lead sponsors. It's Feline Fix by 5 and the International Cat Association. They've been tremendously supportive of this conference, considering this, who knows who was going to show up. We could have had 10 people. So I want to be very, very thankful for our sponsors that decided to give a chance on our team this year. And just to give you a little bit of a background on our 2 leadership sponsors, I just wanted to read a couple of quick promos about them. So one is about Feline Fix by 5 months campaign. So here is a quick promo for them, which is, have you spoken with your vet about the Feline Fix by 5 months campaign? Feline Fix by 5 is a program to raise awareness about the importance of getting kittens fixed before they are 5 months old in order to prevent unplanned litters. Fix by 5 has now been endorsed by all the major national veterinary organizations, and we urge you now to make sure that your vet has this information and is able to share it with clients. To get the full story, check out the Fix by 5 months website. Google Fix by 5 to get all the information. Just Google Fix by 5 for free vet info packets, media kits, articles, and to enter our contest and win a prize. Remember, Fix by 5 saves lives. So it is impressive to think about if we could just get every veterinarian to offer spay-neuter services at 5 months of age, that we would really make a great impact on our cat overpopulation problem. So celebrating the welfare of all cats, the International Cat Association is the world's largest genetic registry of pedigreed cats and the #1 registry for non-pedigreed cats and kittens known as household pets. Whether you adopt or shop, the International Cat Association is the one-stop shop for all cat lovers. The International Cat Association has more than 6,000 members in 104 different countries who all speak the language of cat lover by helping make an impact on the health and welfare of all cats. Members serve to educate and foster responsible spay-neuter awareness in local communities and are active volunteers at local animal shelters and outreach programs for schools and/or senior and disabled citizens. The International Cat Association members also take active roles in numerous citizen advisory groups to foster responsible legislation regarding the health and welfare of cats. To learn more about the International Cat Association, you can go to www.tica.org. So I would like to thank both of those groups for being our lead sponsors. And then for tonight's event, we do have an individual sponsor called Triple D Studios, which designs handbags, jewelry, and accessories inspired by cats for stylish women who embrace feline finesse and shun the crazy cat lady stigma. Triple T Studios is fashion with a passion, supporting global conservation projects. So those are our sponsors, and so if you do have a chance to thank them, that would be fantastic. So anyway, I believe we've also done our technical review. It seems like people are able to handle the GoToWebinar technology, which is fantastic and sweet. You have all been raised well, so that's great. So I'm going to look at the conference review just to give you a little summary of what to expect. If you have not gone to the online catconference.com website, I recommend you do and download the conference itinerary. We have tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. we have Hannah Shaw, who's going to do her Let's Save Some Kittens presentation. Then we have Karen Little and Katie Lisnick and Bridget Wasson. Karen and Katie are going to talk about tip-top TNR best practices and advocacy. Bridget at 2:30 is going to talk about lost and found, how community cat givers and advocates can help get missing cats back home. And then at 4:30 p.m. we have Emma Clifford, which is actually going to be Meredith Hibbert filling in for Emma, but Emma will be there for Q&A at the end, but Emma is in Mexico right now with limited internet. And Brian Cordes, they're going to talk about cats and coconuts making change in Hawaii. And then Sunday, we have at 10 a.m. Mary Peng, who's introducing TNR to China. And we are having one fundraising presentation at 11:30 on Sunday. Sandy Reese of Get Fully Funded will do secrets and success in the small shop. Laura Mullen at 1:15 on Sunday is going to talk about ringworm, which I know we all love to talk about. And Miles Chadwick at 2:30 on Sunday will present on why you need a healthy pet clinic and how to build one. 4 to 5 p.m. we have a packed ending to the conference on Sunday. 4 to 5, Nell Thompson is going to be calling in from Australia and sharing Getting to Zero in Australia. Sunday, January 28th, 5 to 6 p.m. will be Pat Breyer, and she's going to talk about how a humane society handles kittens and cats that are feline leukemia positive and how to get them adopted out. Again, my apologies if you hear Hooch snoring or purring in the background. So we have a lot to cover this weekend. It's going to be very, very filled with information. We're going to do some raffles and trivia questions today, and then we'll do a little Q&A and some introductions. So here are our lead sponsors, Feline Fix by 5. Please do check them out. They have great resources. And then we have the International Cat Association and Triple T Studios, Fashion with a Passion. It's a great story about that little kitty in the front, really inspiring creating this website. So before we continue on, I'd like to just make sure everybody knows about the Community Cats podcast. Find out about all the different programs that we offer. So I thought I would share a bit about that. So we have a podcast. For those of you who might not be aware of that, please go to the communitycatspodcast.com and you can click on the links there. You could subscribe to us. It would be fantastic if people would subscribe on Apple Podcasts, otherwise known as iTunes. The more subscribers we get, the better our placement gets in certain rankings. We're also on Stitcher. We're on Spotify. If you're a YouTuber, we have a YouTube channel. So Google Play, pretty much wherever you can listen to something, that's where we're at. If you go to the communitycatspodcast.com and check us out, we have done around 230 episodes since we started. All of the speakers at this conference have done podcasts, so I highly recommend that you go and check out their shows that I've done in the past. This is how I've met them. And so if you haven't checked out my podcast, I would love it if you would. I also am always looking for guests. So if you have ideas about possible guests for the podcast, feel free to email them to me at Stacy, S-T-A-C-Y, at communitycatspodcast.com. I always want to hear about new things that people are trying, that they're doing, that they're working on. The more we can share, the more we can do. So anyway, then we also offer community cats grants. And for those of you who don't know about them, it's a matching grant program. Julie Jacobson is joining us tonight, and she's actually been the leader of this program for quite a few months now. And so what we do is we would like to help small nonprofits that have revenues of $100,000 or less that are out there trying to help with spaying and neutering and TNRing cats as well as community cats. And we have a short application that you have to fill out. We ask that a group try a new fundraising event or tactic. And in a 3-month period, if they can raise up to $1,000, the foundation will match $1,000. So $1,000 raised will be another $1,000 added to it. We have had approximately 50 to 60 groups participate in this program, and we have had quite a few successful graduates. And we really want to encourage small nonprofits to think about fundraising for spaying and neutering community cats. It's very important that they have a focus on TNR. We also ask that they have mention about spaying and neutering community cats and a trap, neuter, return program on their website, and that they have a presence already with doing trap, neuter, return. But we really want to encourage groups to get involved and be able to fully leverage their fundraising capabilities and being able to raise money for that. If you have any questions about the grants program, feel free to email Julie at grants@communitycatspodcast.com. So we also have a blog and social media that we do. So we are on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we are on Pinterest, if you can imagine that. So pretty much wherever you can be, we will be. We also have an e-newsletter that comes out every week, and we have a blog. Lisa Finkel, who is also on the webinar tonight, has been extremely instrumental in helping get that blog written and up and running. And she's a fantastic support and helper to the Community Cat Podcast team. This is a team. It's a huge team project, and I am so thankful for everybody that is involved in helping. All right, so this is what I think you should get out of this conference, or this is what I'm hoping. I would love to hear from folks in the question section what you think is what you hope to get out of the conference, and I'm going to try and digest those questions so that I can think about how things are presented during the weekend. But many of you who know me know that I love to think outside of the box. And so what that means is really, don't think about all the obstacles that we have, think of all the opportunities and what we can do to make a difference. What can we do to scale our work? How can we impact more cats? How can we impact more communities So really try and think outside of the box and be willing to take some chances. Clearly define your mission. Is the mission your mission? Is it your organization's mission? Is that mission really the same? Our mission, when I was at the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society, our mission really focused on reducing the cat population on the Newburyport waterfront, and it got to the point where we have no cats on the Newburyport waterfront. So our mission was really to ensure that that population of cats was taken care of. We achieved that mission. We also served other missions too, which was to be able to provide programs outside of what we had called our service area. So we were willing to think outside of the box on those components. We didn't want to build a ton of shelters all around Massachusetts, but we did create free spay-neuter opportunities for ferals so that then other organizations could have access to free spay-neuter. So be willing to think outside of the box. Be willing to think that you might not be doing what you're going to be doing 6 or 12 months from now, but be willing to take a chance and make sure that it clearly relates to the mission that you have, as well as the mission that your organization has, or that those two missions are somewhat aligned together and that you're working together in good synchronization. So anyway, so I see a couple of people saying not seeing the presentation, but oh, now it says slide. Got it. Got it. Everybody's good. Perfect. Okay, great. So everybody's away. Great. Cool. So I'd also like to remind folks to make the board feel empowered to be able to make changes. I work with a lot of nonprofits that are really scared to strongly change direction or willing to pivot. And it seems like even in the small groups, you'd think it would happen in, sort of the big standard traditional humane societies, but I think it also happens sometimes in the smaller groups because many of us have people that have been in the organization for years and years and years, and change can be kind of scary. So really boards need to be willing to think through things and be willing to take some chances. So I love it if I hear about an organization that's only run with like 5 or 6 people and they're doing something this year, and then 6 months from now they've like totally changed what they're doing, because that means that they're flexible, they're willing to consider, and they're willing to learn new things. So just be open-minded, be very open-minded this weekend and willing to listen to what these folks have to say, and also be willing to share too. And so Kristen, if you want to change to the next slide. All right. So these kitties are obviously trying to think about how to get that food in that trap. But some of the things that I'm thinking about now and that I hope to be able to share with you in the coming months in greater detail. Kristen, you can flip the slide. So this is my, and this is a work in progress. So you are the first ones to see this. And I'd love comments and thoughts on this. So this is what I would like us to all think about when we are in our communities, and if we have a desire and objective to reduce cat overpopulation in our communities. So many of us are all familiar with the food pyramid. I am on and off a diet probably every other week. So I am very, very familiar with different kinds of diets and different kinds of graphical displays about food and stuff. So I sort of related that into this community cat pyramid. What I want us to think about is how our resources are spent and how we can be more impactful if we spend our resources as this pyramid sort of shows. So at the top of the pyramid, I have sanctuary and cat relocation. Many of us know that operating a cat sanctuary and relocating cats is very risky, and also very time extensive, and it's a really hard practice, and it's hard to do. And so, but yet I've oftentimes heard, well, if we just had enough sanctuaries, all of our problems would go away. And that is not necessarily the case, because I don't think we have the resources for that. And I also do believe that relocation is very risky. I think there's a purpose for that. I think there's a purpose to relocate working cats, but I think that it's risky, and it's not something we should do frequently. If you go down a level, you'll see rescue and adoption. And so that is something that's also quite labor intensive. Takes, we bring the cats in, we process them in our adoption facilities. We usually can't handle the number of cats that our community would like to surrender to us. So we may handle more cats than we would in a sanctuary, but I am, not going to be able to take in all the necessary cats and place them. And also some of those cats may be owned cats. So we have to be careful about that. Then we have TNR. So trap, neuter, return, or return to field, all the various different components there. So we want to do more cats for TNR than we do for rescue and adoption. And I think sometimes we end up doing more rescue and adoption than we do TNR during the course of a year. And I think we need to think about what our ratios are going to be. And then lastly is owned spay neuter cats. And I think this is really the missing piece of the puzzle, because with many groups, that's the last component that we add into our toolkit for success in communities, which is offering free or very, very low cost spay neuter programs for owned cats in the communities. We didn't really start doing this very aggressively at the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society until 2008, and we were not seeing any change in shelter intakes before 2008 in the area shelters. We were seeing it locally in our smaller communities, but we were not seeing it in the bigger shelters. It wasn't until 2008 when low-cost spay-neuter programs for owned cats came into play where we were really able to make an impact on the number of cats coming into shelters. So I would love to be able to say that for every 100 owned spay-neuter cats that you do, or owned cats that you spay and neuter, that you only take in a couple rescue cats. The more cats that you can spay and neuter within the owned community, it's going to be a much greater impact on the number of cats coming into the shelters and the number of cats that you have on the streets. Many of you have heard me talk about Adam and Eve and them being 2 abandoned cats out in a community. And if Adam and Eve do get abandoned, I want to ensure that they're going to get spayed and neutered before they get abandoned. Ideally, they don't get abandoned. That's ideally they don't. But if they do, they're going to both be spayed or neutered before they get abandoned. So that bottom part, that base of your pyramid, if it is a quarter of the size of what it is right now, based on this picture, on this diagram, your whole pyramid's going to just topple right over and you're not going to be successful. So that's something to think about when you're thinking about outside of the box. So many of us are out there pounding the pavement. We're working hard to trap cats out in the community, but we also need to make sure that we have a lot of funds going into spaying and neutering owned cats. So that's my soapbox for the evening, and I just wanted to share that with everybody. So I just wanted to share that. And Kristen, I don't know if you want to change the page. Are people okay on the technical side of things?
They seem to be.
Okay, good, great. So at some point during this weekend, or possibly at a later date, I'm also gonna talk about cat cycling, which is another thought that I have about how we should think about what cats we should actually be spaying and neutering at different times of the year. So I'm just going to give you a little flavor of that and some food for thought. When I first worked with the MSPCA in Massachusetts with trying to convince them how important it is to do owned spays and neuters. They took the month of February in, I think it was 2008, it might have been 2009. They took the month of February and they offered $5 neuters for the month of February. Just kind of on a lark, they were sort of willing to try that out for a month just to see what would happen. And in May, they saw a dramatic drop in the number of kittens that they had come into their shelter. After February, I think they did like 300 or 400 neuters. And they were just tremendously, tremendously surprised. So one of the things that I'd like to recommend is that we really think about doing a very high pulse rate of owned spaying and neutering cats in that wintertime. It's when we're usually down for trapping our TNR cats because of the cold weather and bad weather for trapping. It's also the time when sometimes our numbers are down in our shelters depending where we are geographically. I know not everybody is in New England, and we're all at different points in different places around the country. So our cat cycling graphs might look different based on our geography, but I do think that there is a place for some really aggressive pulse spaying, neutering during certain times of the year. So we're not always just doing the same amount all the time. Really do some heavy hits. And I think that you would also see some dramatic changes in the number of cats coming into shelters in your communities. When I talk about no cat left behind programs, I'm talking about making sure that we have all the tools in that toolkit that we need to be able to assist cats. I'm currently working with advising a small group in Chelsea, Massachusetts, and we're very targeted in helping cats in Chelsea. So we want to ensure that we have spaying and neutering subsidies for owned cats. We're providing spaying and neutering for TNR. We're also spaying and neutering cats that are getting transferred and put up for adoption at transfer partner organizations, because this organization is not an adoption organization. And we also have funds for emergency assistance for anything medical that's beyond the spaying and neutering component. There's also food. We provide food every month at our meetings. So we try to do the best that we can to provide all the necessary things for the cats in our community, but we are focusing just on Chelsea. We hope to expand once we can, but it's a one town at a time kind of situation. So just try to think about no cat left behind programs, and it's not always just TNR or just rescue. There's a whole range of different options out there. So it's important to think about resource allocation and global issues. That's something new that I've been thinking about this year too, is, how can we spread this mantra of community cats globally? How can we really spread the word, all around country to country? This is a problem, or not a problem. It's a situation that we're faced with above and beyond the United States. And that's why we have Beijing, we have Australia, we have other countries represented this weekend, and I'm just thrilled to be able to bring those folks to us. So, Kristen, if you want to go ahead a slide. So we're going to practice this system. So we have some raffle items for the weekend, and so Triple T Studios has donated this very nice cat handbag valued at $79. I feel like I'm doing like the WGBH auction now. But anyway, so we are going to do a trivia question. We're going to try it out. We're going to do this trivia question, and in the question box, you put your answer. Whoever answers this question first, again, gets it correctly, is going to then have to put their name and their mailing address in the questions, and then we'll get this mailed out to you. So the question is, cats spend 1/3 of their waking hours doing this. So we'll see what comes up on the answer here.
Grooming would be the answer, and
Oh
it
my
looks
goodness.
like Emily Sullivan is first.
So who got it first?
Emily Sullivan.
Emily Sullivan, congratulations. Ding, 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 ding. So in the, I'm going to write your name down here on my paper. Okay. And what we will do is we will mail, this will be mailed from Triple T Studios to you directly. We just need your mailing address and we will get that mailed to you. So this might be a situation where if you have good bandwidth, you've got a better chance at winning a prize. I don't know. I don't know the science behind all this. So
Harder trivia questions. Damn, you guys are good.
I know. Kristen is in charge of the trivia questions, so. So anyway, okay, and then the next prize that is from the Kensington Publishers, and it's a collection of 4 different cat books. You will be seeing this package many times because they have generously donated 10 of these book bundles to us to raffle off during the weekend. So if you don't get it tonight, no worries, you're going to have 9 more chances during the weekend. So here is the next trivia question to come up. According to a Banfield Pet Hospital study, doing this to your male cat will help him live up to 62% longer.
Oh my gosh. Johnny Sandalova?
Johnny Sandalova, hooray. You guys this is a great little game.
I was going to say, I would like to know how you got that answer in before the question was finished.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do another question. We're going to do another book bundle. Okay. Because you guys are so good at this one, but I'm going to try and see if I can find one that's going to be hard. Oh, this one's hard, actually. I would say this one is hard. Dogs only have 10 of these, while cats have up to 100.
Ooh. Nobody's got it yet. Oh, wait. Michelle Hoffman, you've spelled it wrong, but I know what you're saying. It's vocalizations is the answer.
Ah, great. Okay, fantastic. Okay, all right. Kristen, are you writing down these folks' addresses or am I supposed to do that? I just want to make sure we don't lose it.
I am not.
I can do it. I'll do it. I can do it. Okay. Yep, I will do it. So while I'm scrolling back and collecting everybody's addresses, we have 68 people on the webinar tonight. And what I would like to do is see if folks can chime in and I know you don't see the questions, but just let us know where you might be from and also if you have any burning questions that we can chat about tonight.
I already have a couple of burning questions from people.
Okay, great.
If you'd like to address them.
Sure.
A couple of questions about spay neuter, particularly places where a existing vet is that is not so thrilled about having a low-cost spay neuter option in the area because they see it as cutting into their business. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because I know we dealt with that at MRFRS.
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges when you're working with a private veterinarian. There's definitely a lot of challenges. And the beautiful thing that we had in Newburyport was we had quite a few veterinarians, so we were able to kind of play one off the other. The thing that I recommend when working with a veterinarian is make it seem like it's a business partnership, so that it's not like you need to do this for me. We would definitely do everything in our power to promote a veterinarian's business that helped us. We would certainly refer a lot of our adopted cat, parents to the vet. Even our health records had the logo of the veterinarian on the paper. I mean, it has to have the veterinarian's name and information, but we prominently displayed their logo. And if they wanted to send along a coupon for $25 off. And that's from the adoption side of things. Trap, neuter, return, getting private veterinarians to do feral cats for TNR cats, as well as owned cats, is a very tough challenge. Before we had our mobile spay neuter clinic, before we had the Catmobile, we did use Friends of Animals vouchers, and our local veterinary community was okay about that because they felt that we did have such a huge cat overpopulation problem that there wasn't that much abuse going on there. So the Friends of Animals vouchers did well for us. But what I would recommend is just working to develop a very good business relationship with the veterinarian. I would, offer to promote their business if you have a newsletter or a website. Now, it's ideal if you have multiple. Choice is the best thing. If you have 2 or 3 veterinarians to choose from, that's ideal. If you have one veterinarian, you're also not psyched about them. It's just a really hard match. You have to make choices as to whether you drive an hour to another clinic or you use your local veterinarian. You just have to sort of make your best choices and use them for what they're best at. Maybe they're only good at doing neuters. So sort of just make your choices. But I know that there are definitely spay neuter deserts out there, I call them, and that's resource deserts. And I think I would love to have an interactive map that goes all over the United States, and we could see where our spay neuter deserts are. So we could actually be really strategic about trying to put in either a mobile clinic or a Humane Alliance model clinic or something that is able to handle the capacity of cats that need access to spaying and neutering. And I hope that helps to answer the question.
Yeah, and actually the spay neuter desert concept is actually a great segue into the next question. Jody from California would like to know how to start a TNR group in a rural and poor region that doesn't really have any shelter resources around them.
Okay, so there's no shelter and no clinic.
Nope.
Yeah. So we've worked with, when I did the mentoring program at MRFRS, we worked with a couple of groups that had to travel 2 to 3 hours each direction for the nearest clinic. So there's 2 choices. You either can take the cats to a clinic or you can bring a mobile clinic in. So there is an organization in Connecticut, Julie Jacobson knows that group, that actually offers sort of like a lease out program for mobile spay neuter clinics. And so there's an option or trying to contact, any group sort of in the region that might have a mobile clinic that might be willing to lease out. A lot of groups do get mobile clinics and then they don't work to capacity. So you might be able to work out a loaner deal, and then you just get a independent contractor veterinarian and a technician, and that goes back to that cat cycling thing where it's like a pulse thing. And so you say, oh, okay, February is going to be my month, or wherever you're located. If you're up in like North Dakota or something, you say May or June. That's the month we're gonna park a mobile clinic. In a parking lot, grocery store parking lot for the month, and everybody's going to bring their cat there. And you do your fundraising the other 11 months, fundraise, and then just have this real power spay neuter event going on for a month's period of time. And so I'd say that's probably one of the best ways to do it. The other way is to have everybody come there and you rent a U-Haul, and then you drive 3 hours to the nearest clinic, and you just reserve that clinic for those periods, those days. But you can spend a year fundraising and then just, bash through hundreds and hundreds of cats in a month's time.
All right. That's all fantastic information. The next couple of questions are about feral cats, and we'll start with relocation. Do you have any tips or can you weigh the pros and cons of relocating a feral cat versus starting a barn program for people to adopt feral cats to? Or would you delineate those 2 things as completely separate? programs?
So in terms of relocation, I have only done barn relocation. I know that Chicago has done some relocation, like in backyard relocation to help with the rat situation in Chicago, and they will relocate with like an outdoor cage in a protected area and do that as the acclimation cage for like 3 weeks, and then let the cats be released in the backyard at that time, and that's been relatively, as far as I can tell from the book that I read, it was successful and it continues to be successful. I've only had intimate involvement with barn relocation, where we've done the acclimation cage or a used attack room, or a horse stall, like with chicken wire fencing in, doing the real, acclimation period for about 4 weeks in the barn. The retention for those cats, meaning staying there, if you go back 12 months later, you'll probably be at about 50% of the cats there. The cats that relocate the best are the ones that are pre-bonded. So we had a group of 6 cats that had been together pretty much their whole life, and we relocated the 6 cats to a barn, and they had this beautiful thing built for them as their own like acclimation space and everything. They went to a barn in Haverhill, and it was extremely successful. But if you take cats and you kind of just put them together for 4 weeks and think that that's going to work, that's a less successful relocation route. It also depends on the barn. And I mean, we had barns that had TVs in them, so it was like really like fancy barns. And so it's really more like a home adoption we sort of thought about. But and then there are more barns that are like more like a lean-to type thing. So you can kind of predict how the environment is going to make it a successful relocation. I definitely believe there's a place in this world for working cats, but I don't think we should be relocating sort of without some strategic thought. And I think the way I look at relocation is we only relocate if the cats are going to be euthanized otherwise.
Okay. Hopefully that helped the whole host of feral cat questions and what to do with them. And if not, please feel free to follow up with other questions. We do have, I guess we should give a shout out to Elise Erickson. She's from Treehouse in Chicago, and they do the relocation program. So.
Yep. Yeah, and if she can remember the name of the book, I read the book about the story from Treehouse. So if she can put in the questions the name of the book that I read, which was very good, it might be a good resource for people.
Excellent. I will keep an eye out for that. And there's a few questions about, and I'm going to kind of lump them all together because they're very similar, about educating a public that doesn't necessarily want to be educated. There's several people who are concerned about feral and owned populations that are kind of mingling, and a lot of it's due to just cultural problems and maybe a lack of education about, caring for cats. Do you have any recommendations for how to help the public understand the needs of feral cats, to value their feral cats, and to maybe counter some of the myths that people will bring up? There's specifically a question in here about other groups that will come in and parrot back statistics, and I don't know what statistics you're speaking about specifically, Chad, but they're saying that the statistics aren't quote unquote good science. They're not supported by anything. They're just kind of making noise. So they're kind of curious how to counteract that sort of thing and better communicate with the people who can ultimately make a difference for those feral cats.
Okay, so the way that I approach the negative Nellies are basically one thing that we talk about like cultural differences, and there's the cultural opinions about cats and blah, blah, blah. I don't run into that so often if you're offering free spay neuter. if there's free spay neuter available, people are going to show up. Um, and somehow those cultural differences kind of just wither away. And so I would say offer free spay neuter first, get the funding for it, focus your energy and efforts on that. And pretty much if you walk into any environment and you say, I can get these cats, spayed neutered for free, there's usually, not much resistance from that side of things. 90% of the times these folks are feeding the cats. What they're feeding, I don't know, but they're definitely feeding the cats. So they're definitely participating in the lives of those cats. If somebody is aggressive and says, I want these cats gone, I want to get rid of them, well, the best and the only way, as we all know, is to get them spayed and neutered, is the best step to eliminating the cat population. And so they, and I've dealt with many sort of angry neighbor situations where one neighbor's feeding the cats, the other one can't stand the cats. And then once you get everybody spayed and neutered, it's all a happy, it usually becomes a happy family. And there is a lot of fancy dances that have to go on, but I mean, I've dealt with the bird situation and stuff. And if we are very clear to say that our objective is reducing and eventually eliminating our feral cat population, that is our focused objective, and that we offer free spay neuter services for feral cats, for quasi-owned cats, for whatever has 4 paws on the asphalt that's not spayed or neutered, that we can get it taken care of and spayed and neutered for free, then we're all on the same page. So I've usually been able to, work around the negative Nellies that way. Cultural differences seems to run more in the dog world than the cat world in terms of that like neutering thing and stuff. So I don't feel like we run into it that much as long as we say it's free.
Okay, so it's more
it's more financial.
Yeah, and identifying a common goal that you're both working towards, maybe that kind of help.
Yeah. I mean, if you got 10 cats in your backyard and you say, oh, it's $25 a cat, that's $250. Who's going to spend $250 on 10 cats in your backyard? And I mean, in our world, that's not a lot of money per cat. But if it's free, then they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I mean, if you're only going to do 2 cats, it makes no sense to do 2 cats out of 10. So you have to make sure that you're figuring out a way to get the whole group done.
The next question actually is about the price of spay neuter. Penny Legg in New Jersey, who's doing low cost spay neuter, has their price for owned cats set at $51.03, which is quite an interesting number. She wants to know if the price should go lower, and I'll add a follow-up to that. What is your feeling on doing low-cost spay neuter for people who can afford to do their spay neuter at a regular vet?
So as long as it has 4 paws on the asphalt and it's contributing to the cat overpopulation problem, I believe we can spay and neuter that cat. So I tend to focus more on the cat, less on the person. Now, if a person who can afford to go to a private veterinarian but would rather go to a low-cost spay and neuter clinic, I can see it. I can see the reason behind it because it's a one-stop shop. You go, you get your vaccines, you get your spay and neuter done. You don't have to do all like the pre-check and all that stuff. There is a convenience factor in there too. And you should be, regardless of who's coming to your clinics or through your programs, you should be soliciting them all for donations. So, that person could potentially become a donor or a participant. You're able to have a conversation with them about what the realities are of what's going on in the community. For every 100 people out there, sure, there's probably 2 or 3 people who take advantage of the system, and that's just the way the world works. I'm not going to get, shaken up about it. I believe there are some organizations that would rather not do free spay neuter, but they'll do something like a $10 cost per cat. And I think that there have been some analysis between the $25 and the $10 range. You can do a copay situation. So if your cost is $51 and you can't subsidize that whole amount, you might ask for a $25 copay for the owned cats, thinking that that person doesn't have more than a couple of cats.
Mhm.
But with the person who has like 10 cats, you can slide scale it down or whatever. So there's a lot of different models that you can choose. The main point is at whatever sort of sales funnel you choose to use to try and get these cats into your program, is that they walk out spayed or neutered and ear tipped if they're going back out. But you want to make sure that you're providing the path to success for those cats.
There's a great comment in here from Samantha Taylor that they don't do free altering there, but they do a $40 package where they include the rabies vaccine. And then they have, they do a $40 package that has the spay or neuter, and then they have a $10 add-on for the rabies vaccine. So it's just $50. And they get kind of all of the stuff taken care of, and then they use that to do free ferals on Fridays. I thought that was kind of an interesting idea. Do you have any recommendations for how to price your spay neuter? Like, is there a sweet spot, and does it matter what area you're in? How would one gather the data to get to the price point that makes the most sense for your neighborhood?
That's a great question. And I think that the largest subsidies should be applied to, if you're looking at the top 10 poorest communities in your state, I think they should have incredibly substantial subsidies pumped into them, regardless of what their statistics are in the area shelters. I just think if you look at those communities, you're going to have a lot of free roaming cats on the streets. And then then you're going to kind of go stepping down. So those would be your targeted programs. And then you might want to have more of like that $50 charge, or we have, an $80 charge for the Catmobile for the more like suburban areas that, have more of a standard program. And then they help be able to cover the cost to subsidize, like the ferals and that kind of thing. So I think you can have, like what we would say, we have targeted grant money for certain communities. And I just think the easiest thing to do is just take your top 10 poorest communities and just chip away at those first. And then sort of work around to be able to identify where you're either spay neuter desert or a black hole, or however you want to call it. And the best way to do that too is to collaborate in your region with the other organizations to find out, sort of where the greatest areas of impact are needed.
I think this is a question just for me. I feel like I remember you talking about statistics that correlate with ways to identify areas that need spay neuter. And I'm trying to remember what they were, and I want to say infant mortality rate.
That's correct.
Very well with spay and neuter need.
Yeah, so Gary Petronic did this analysis, oh gosh, it was probably over 10 years ago now, looking at communities with high infant mortality rates and the numbers of cats that were being surrendered into area shelters. And it was in the greater Boston area. So he was looking at the Dorchester, Roxbury, South Boston, sort of the sub-communities within the greater Boston area. And all of the communities that had the higher infant mortality rates also had high surrender rates into the two large shelters in Boston, except South Boston, which has had one of the country's first low-cost spay neuter clinics, Alliance for Animals, which started back in like 1990 and had been aggressively doing spay neuter in South Boston at an affordable price for quite a few years, and had made a tremendous impact in that community. So that community was not statistically significant in the shelters with their impact. So it was really a defining moment that showed how important that owned spay neuter number was in making an impact in shelter cat overpopulation.
Excellent. People are sending in the prices that they um, tend to value their spay and neuter at for low costs, and they've run pretty much anywhere between 5 and 65. Just as a fun fact for you guys. The next question I have is about feral cat relocations. Jacqueline from Charles River Alley Cats said that they also don't do feral relocations unless absolutely necessary, like you were saying before. And I'm curious, for people who don't already know, what would you say is kind of your hot list for absolutely necessary, and what could maybe be worked with?
So what's like a scenario of what's an absolutely necessary relocation? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so there's some things that seem dire that may not be if you're able to work with them, and then there's some things that, obviously if they're next to a highway, they probably should be moved. So I guess I'm looking for, what would be, your top 3 list of situations where you'd want to relocate a feral colony if possible.
Okay. All right. So, they're not easy answers. I can't go like 1, 2, 3, 4. You just said like relocate next to a highway. Well, if they're all adult cats and they've already been there for 3 to 4 years, they already know about the highway. I mean, once you get past 6 or 7 months of kittendom, if it's a TNR colony, they're fine next to the highway because they've been there forever and ever and ever. So I would not necessarily relocate them because of that, because it's not like they just appeared. Now, if somebody dumped cats next to the highway, that's a whole different story. And I wouldn't relocate them because they'd probably be friendly. So you'd be trapping them and you'd bring them in and they'd probably be friendly cats and you'd put them up for adoption. So scenarios of relocation, just trying to think through my history here. So a scenario would be demolition of a house and there is not a neighborly option nearby to sort of absorb those cats if they're like specifically living in and out of like of a basement. So a condemned building that's getting slated to be torn down, and these cats have a long history of having a life there. We ran into that in Newburyport where Tannery 2, the tannery part across the street, we had a colony of cats living in there. And we tried to move most of them out of the way. We did not relocate those cats. We tried to move them out of the way. And actually Zorro's mother, we think probably didn't make it during construction in that period of time. But it was a risk we took because we just didn't think that relocating them was going to be successful. And trapping them was actually brutally impossible anyway. So not impossible, but the Zorro's mother was a very, very tough cat to trap. But I can see in a scenario where there's some demolition going on, you would want to do some relocation. I've really try and push it so that the cats stay where they are. But if there's anybody friendly in the colony, I definitely put them on my room at the inn list. So if there's, anybody that is potentially adoptable, then they're on the room at the inn list. And when there's room at the inn, you bring them in and try to put them up for adoption. Obviously, if the cats are not into that, we have to put them back. And if you develop a relationship with the cats, or there's a feeder that develops a relationship with the cats, then they're going to be able to sort of ascertain maybe what's the best route to go with the cats. But this is not a black and white answer. So you kind of have to go with what your gut says, and what your resources are at that time. I mean, doing a relocation, it's so hard in the summertime when you're busy dealing with kittens and trapping and everything to also do a barn relocation. It's just so really, it's just so tough to kind of do all of that at the same time.
So it's more about
you know.
prioritizing your time and your resources
Yeah,
than,
and I mean, there's nothing about abuse with cats because feral cats know how to stay away from abuse. If it's a friendly cat, then you're gonna scoop that cat and get it out if somebody's abusing the cat. Friendly cats are the ones that are gonna get abused. Kittens are the ones that are gonna get abused. But the ferals, they're smart. They know how to stay away from that.
we were talking about that a little earlier today with the medical coordinator at the shelter I volunteer at. We were talking about their comparing them to squirrels. So feral cats are a little like squirrels. They're not, don't think of them like cats. In that note, there is a question about any tips for taming feral cats.
Okay, so whoever asked that question, please define what you call taming. Do you call it socializing? Or do you call it accepting of their behavior? Um, I mean, socializing ferals is very food focused and playing focused event. Um, so you work with a lot of food and a lot of play therapy. If you're talking about socializing kittens, I am the proud owner of a 15-year-old semi-feral cat where I was the fourth foster home for her when she was a kitten. So, and she pretty much lives in one floor and is still very shy. You know, so it depends on what you're expecting with regards to taming. I think it's more of the cat is taming you rather than you taming the cat. Um, being accepting of who they are and take what you can get from them if you're talking about an adult cat. Talking about kittens, kittens under the age of 12 weeks and under, you have a good chance of getting them socialized really well. 12 to 16, we're getting better at it. I used to call semi-feral kittens the no-see-ums or the great buddy cat. So they're great secondary cats. We would like waive the adoption fee if somebody wanted to adopt a Shire kitten. There's some great resources. I mean, Jackson Galaxy has some great resources on socializing feral cats and kittens. Then there's the National Kitten Coalition and Hannah Shaw certainly all have some great resources with regards to socializing kittens. There's a Spirit Cat program at Dakin Humane Society in Springfield, Mass, and they do a nice job. Of course, the folks at Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society, we've always dealt with a lot of shy cats, but I think that our approach has been pretty much we accept them and not been very super aggressive about like taming them. We've been more just accepting of who they are. Both kittens, we do a lot of play therapy and a lot of treats and food and that kind of stuff, a lot of bribing.
That makes sense. I was going to say I have one of our shy ferals in my office right now.
Mm-hmm.
The book that was about the treehouse
Yeah.
Chicago situation, that's Community Cats: A Journey into the World of Feral Cats by Anne Beal, and that's Beall. Thank you, Elsie, for getting that back to us. And she also mentioned the top reasons why they will relocate. They'll relocate if there's hoarding situations, they'll trim the numbers down. If the caretaker dies or moves. And there's nobody in the neighborhood who could take over feeding. And if they're in imminent danger, which I think is probably a given. Let me see. So this is actually something you guys are going to differ on. Alicia Higby writes in saying the Humane Society is trying to have her put a FIV positive cat back on the streets, and she doesn't think that's safe. How does she approach that?
Well, I'm going to differ on that one. So I don't have a problem with putting an FIV positive cat back out on the street. I don't have a problem having an FIV positive cat in a house with a household full of negative cats, as long as they're not fighting and the FIV cat is not, fighting with deep bite wounds and that kind of thing. So, basically with regards to the decision of whether to return a cat or not is not based on a blood test. It's based on what their physical presence is like and where they're returning to. So if you've got a 15-pound healthy looking cat that has a regular feeder and has a nice feeding area, nice shelter, and it seems like that's the best option for the cat, then I have no problem returning a FIV positive cat or a feline leukemia positive cat. A test is only a test of what's going on with that cat at that particular moment in time. Lots of things can change over time, and as long as there's somebody out there caring for that cat, then the cat can go back. But if there are options, if the cat's like this, a lot of FIV positive cats have these big round cheeks and they're lovable males, and the return option is not that great, and there is an option for adoption, then maybe that's the best route to go. But if in terms of just saying FIV positive cats shouldn't be released, I disagree with that.
Okay. She just wanted to clarify that she didn't mean that the test made him a bad cat. It just, it's the concern about passing FIV on. Did you maybe want to talk a little bit about how, I believe everybody will probably have your background, but you were an integral part of growing the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society. And they have some really interesting programs for FIV positive and feline leukemia positive cats in terms of adoptions. And I didn't know if maybe you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. So yeah, I ran the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society for 16 years, and in that period of time, we probably assisted close to 100,000 cats between offering spay neuter, low cost, free spay neuter, as well as I believe in that period of time we probably adopted out about 15,000 cats and kittens. We were the first cageless shelter in Massachusetts. We opened that up in 2003. In the late 90s, we actually had a feline leukemia positive adoption program. We had a situation where we had a nursing mom with her kittens, and we got some orphan kittens in, and so she took on those kittens too, and they nursed on her. It turned out those kittens were feline leukemia positive. And this was back like in 1996, 97. And through their nursing on the mom, they made the mom positive too. We brought the kittens in to be spayed or neutered, and this was before they had been tested, and they tested positive, and the veterinarian euthanized those kittens. When we realized that happened, we were so shocked, and we had developed such a loving relationship with this mom cat, who inevitably ended up testing positive because of these kittens, that we decided we were not happy with that protocol. And we decided that, she seemed perfectly healthy. She had done her job in helping these kittens, and we really wanted to make a statement and a commitment to cats that test positive for either FIV or feline leukemia. And at that point in time, by 1998, we eliminated our testing policy with regards to feral cats. So in 1998, we stopped testing any cats that were being returned outside. And then any of the cats that tested positive for FIV and feline leukemia were not euthanized. Certainly, they were evaluated for quality of life. And if they had poor quality of life, as we would with any cat, we would euthanize that cat. But if they seemed and appeared to be healthy, we would find a foster home option for them, and we would adopt them out. The FIV cats were at our shelter, but at that point in time, it was a caged shelter in the late 90s. But it was one of the reasons why we wanted to move to a new facility where we could have a cageless shelter. In 2003, we moved to our cageless shelter, but yet we did have what was called the FIV room. So we were keeping the FIV cats separate, and turned out that was, one of our sort of back office areas, and it became the room with the friendliest cats, and we had like 14 of them in that room, and they were becoming like the largest population in the building, and our negative cats were more like the no-see-ums, and so they were all like hiding on top of the kitchen cupboards and stuff like that. So it seemed like people were just not looking at those FIV positive cats, and we'd done some research, and on FIV, and so we decided to let them out in the general population as long as they weren't causing any problems. So 2003, we opened up the door and let them out into the front room. When people first walked into the building, now they were seeing the FIV positive cats along with the negative cats. And within 2 weeks, we had all 14 of those cats adopted. And it was just because they were hidden in the back room. They had a sign that said like FIV room. And so people thought, oh, they're, desperately sick. We're not going to go near those cats. And by just putting them into the general population, they became extremely adoptable because they were extremely adoptable. The FIV cats tends to be the most friendly cats out there. I know, most of them have the big, they're the big round-faced male, tomcats that are like butterballs. And so, they're full of personality and everything. So, and we also, when we moved into our new facility, we really made a commitment to feline leukemia positive cats. So we have an adoption room there. And, it's a different scenario because they aren't intermingled with the general population. But we are going to hear from Pat Breyer, and I recommend everybody to stay with us through the conference to hear from Pat Breyer and to hear about their program, about how they adopt out feline leukemia positive cats into negative households and have had fantastic success with that program. So I definitely recommend people tune in on that presentation on Sunday. But yeah, we've made a strong commitment, and we're known all around the state as being the place to get FIV and FeLuc positive cats adopted. In my dream world, we would have organizations would learn from us rather than transfer to us or transfer to MRFRS. My dream world is that everybody would learn how to do it on their own, because it's really, it's not that hard. And we actually, Kristen, you might be able to find this, but there's a great video of an FIV positive adoption that was done at MRFRS, and I have referenced that quite a few times.
Okay, I will hunt that down. I will do some follow-up on that, because we're looking at my screen now. So if I go searching stuff.
No, right. No, we'll do that at a later date, but I can give you the link to that.
Yes, we'll follow up with that link on the Facebook group, if everybody's a member of the Facebook group. We'll also, I was mentioning to Alicia, there's a study that was done recently on transmission of FIV in shelter situations. That was done over a long period of time, and it's not anecdotal evidence, and it's pretty interesting to have read what their results were, and they were fantastically positive for integrating FIV cats with non-FIV cats. So it's an interesting read, and you guys can obviously judge for yourselves, but I will make sure that gets up in the Facebook group as well. I'm trying to see if there's anything else here that we didn't really cover, and I don't think there is. So,
well, can I ask a question of the group?
Of course.
So we're going to reverse the tables here. So my question to the group is, what are your greatest pain points? Meaning, what are your obstacles? So how about we say access to spay neuter resources, funding, volunteers, burnout. What are the things that really are obstacles to you right now?
Let's see. Are you looking at the questions as well, or are you?
Yeah, I'm getting there. My goodness. Okay, funding. Local. I hear local law, funding. Julie Jacobson. Yes.
Finding volunteers looks like it's come up a few times too.
For TNR, yeah. Yeah, I do have a question about trying to get more trappers recruited and that kind of thing. Burnout. Okay, I see some burnout.
Kittens are a problem.
Too many kittens. Not in Massachusetts. If you come to Massachusetts, they want kittens.
Oh, a facility not permitted overnight animals. That's really interesting.
So that goes back into that toolkit thing where, you know, the community is not supporting the full toolkit necessary in order to be successful. I mean, that's what happened to me in 2008. You know, I was like, Friends of Animals certificates, just not cutting it. And so that's why we had to create a spay neuter program, because um, our toolkit was not full.
Hmm. What would you say is a good first step, like the very first step when people are, trying to start a new program or to start, a brand new group and get some people together?
Mhm.
What would you say is good motivation for that?
So the first thing, if I'm sitting in the room saying, Stacy, I want to help the cats in my community, what can I do? So I'm talking, have my own conversation with myself first. And then I take a piece of paper and I write down, what do I know is already happening in my community? And if I don't know, I have to go out and look around my community. So what do I know? Do I have a shelter in my community? What does the shelter provide? What services do the shelter provide? Um, what, is there a spay neuter clinic in my community? If my community, has absolutely nothing, and depending on the size and the population of my community, I would say, if you're asking me today, I would start a low-cost spay neuter program. That would be my first step. I mean, Humane Alliance has beautiful training programs on how to start a clinic, and there's great resources out there, and there's even funding on how to start a nonprofit. That is if nothing exists out there. You can't do anything unless you have a veterinarian doing spay neuter. If you have a private veterinarian that's willing to do high volume, and say your population in your community is like 10,000 people, then the private veterinarian is probably going to be able to handle much of your load, and maybe a couple of trips to a larger clinic a little drive away. But if you are in a spay neuter desert, you're going to have to get that spay neuter in there first. But certainly the first thing I'm going to do is see what is going on in my community, and then find like-minded people. So with that, I would talk to the local board of health, and try and connect in with any of the local organizations. I mean, I'm a great person for organizing meetings and stuff, so I would get the room in the library and get someone from the board of health there, animal control there, all the any of the local groups there, and just say, hey, let's just put everything on the table, and let's see what we can do to be more, to be successful working together. An example being, in Chelsea, where I've got this group going, there's a group called Broken Tail and Rescue, and they joined in on the conversations with the Chelsea group because they weren't getting enough cats for their adoption program. And they didn't want to start importing because they knew that there were cats out there that needed help, but they just weren't able to access them. So they started coming to these meetings, and then they're one of our biggest transfer groups for so they took 100 cats last year, and put them up for adoption through their adoption program, Cats and Kittens. And but here was a group that was like, you think they're right there, right in the area. Why couldn't they find cats? But they were having a hard time sourcing cats. And then they partner with us, with another group that doesn't want to do adoption or anything, and they're able to source local cats in the community, and then they're serving their mission even better.
Um, it does seem like there's quite a bit of funding questions. Money is the root of all our problems, apparently.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna share with everybody my ratio. This is my magical ratio, which is, for every one trapper you have, you need 4 people fundraising for that trapper. So that's my magical number. I used to always tell trappers that I worked with, I said, I have to have 4 people working on your case. And some trappers go really crazy. But funding, when I was with Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society, I spent at least 80% of my time on fundraising. And it's, so you always have to have some commitment to fundraising, going on all the time. And that's one thing why our Community Cats Grants program is so good, because not only do we mentor on like doing one specific event, but we'll also mentor on fundraising in general. But the fire, you have to feed the fire all the time. So you have to be building your personal networks with individuals, corporate relationships, grant writing, which means a lot of record keeping. Google Docs is really great to help smooth the process with your grant writing because you can keep a lot of your documents that way. Um, you know, when you're a volunteer corps and you're like doing everything, I mean, I was director of operations or, you know, in charge of the shelter, as well as doing the fundraising and all the other stuff too, running the board meetings and stuff. It's pretty crazy. It can get really, really crazy. So you have to delegate and really always constantly recruit new people. One other thing I used to always have was if I was a leader of an organization is I would try and delegate one task a week. So because I knew people were going to throw things on my plate. So I would always say, I didn't care if it was delegating like picking up one donation can or running the donation can program. I didn't care the sort of scale of the delegation, just the fact that I was doing it once a week so I knew I could give away stuff.
Mhm.
And that always made me feel good because it made me realize that it, the organization wasn't 100% dependent upon me doing everything.
That's actually another point that people are making is that burnout can be a problem. It sounds like with a lack of volunteers and a lack of funds, you know, everybody's kind of burning the candle at both ends. Do you have suggestions for addressing burnout in volunteers?
So it goes back to some of the things that I was talking about in the very beginning of my talk, which is being willing to change your organization and pivot and close things down. So MRFRS, Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society, we ran a sanctuary for quite a couple of years. And we realized it wasn't for us at that point in time as an organization. It wasn't where we wanted to focus our resources and our energy. You know, it was a real drain. And you know, be willing to let things go or scale things back and change direction. So you know, one thing that we do in Chelsea, you know, is we partner with a clinic and all the calls, the owned cat calls go directly to that clinic. They schedule it, they do everything. The only thing we do is we pay the bill. And so basically the effort that goes into assisting 300 cats a year getting done involves writing the grant application, getting the funding, and paying the bill, which is something that is easily done by one or two people. But yet at the end, we've got 300 cats. So if we had, you know, done it a different way, like, well, we have to pick up the cats, we have to take them, blah, 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 and do all the work, that's a huge project. So if you have limited bandwidth or you lose bandwidth, if people leave the organization and you lose bandwidth, don't be afraid to flex. Don't be afraid to close things down. We had a program called Perfect Companions that was matching older cats with seniors. And we ran that for a while. And we ended up closing that down because we just didn't feel like we were well enough prepared to handle the challenges when a human senior reached a certain age and they ended up having to lose their cat because they moved to a nursing home that wouldn't accept a cat or something like that. And our volunteers weren't really prepared for that change. So since we didn't have those resources and our volunteers were getting emotionally burned out, we decided to pull the plug on that program. It was a beautiful program, it was a wonderful program, but we just didn't feel like we were really prepared for it or able to handle it. And it's okay. It's okay to start something up and then to close it down. It's okay to do that. You don't have to commit to doing everything all the time.
That makes perfect sense. There's a question here about working with other organizations. Sometimes it seems to be difficult to if you have another, you know, TNR, somebody close, you know, you'd like to think that everybody's going to work together perfectly all the time, but there's some amount of power struggle and some amount of, you know, territory creep and that sort of thing. How would you recommend kind of approaching another group, or how, I guess, if you've already approached another group and it's not going wonderfully and swimmingly, how would you recommend diffusing some of that tension?
It's a good question. One thing I do find with some TNR groups is that there's a lot of territorialness in there. And even though you might have one trapper who's, got a list of 300 cats that they have to trap, they don't want you to go out and trap those cats because it's their cats and it's on their list and, whatever, whatever. And I'd say that you have to keep the lines of communication open as long as possible and as much as possible. Continue to invite them to your meetings. I would hope you would have sort of regional meetings. And if you have regional meetings with multiple people in the room, that helps diffuse sort of a one-on-one sort of tension. This is going back into the late 90s, there used to be a lot of tension between the MRFRS and the MSPCA, and it wasn't really until we started sitting down as a group along with other organizations, and we're sort of trying to understand a day in the life of, what's our day, what's my day like, what's your day like, and sort of opening up lines of communication where, now we're able to, after many, many years, we've worked together a lot. So I'd say keeping the lines of communication open, meeting as regularly as possible. And I know we're all busy and we're all stressed out, but in Massachusetts, Dunkin' Donuts and coffee goes a long way. And there does come to be a point where with some organizations, those walls that they've built up around themselves are really, really, really big. And really hard to break down, and you kind of sometimes have to wait until there's a change of leadership, and then you can get in there and really make change. So don't spend a ton of time, but if you can, just keep the door open for them to participate.
Yeah, it's always good to remember too that you're all in it together. So if they're coming, if it seems like they want to be in charge of everything, sometimes it can make sense to just back off and let them be in charge, because as long as the cats are getting trapped, you're
Right.
working towards the same goal.
Right. I mean, the big challenges are when an organization is not behaving progressively. And that turns into the conversation about advocacy and when do you end up having to go down that route? And that's a very big question, and probably not one to be handled in 5 or 10 minutes. But there is a question when there's an organization that maybe isn't as progressive. We're not all in the same timeline about how we're learning, different things about community cats and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of help. I like peer pressure now. There's so many of us doing such great work. I did this with veterinarians too, with pediatric spay neuter, as I always used to say, oh, well, so-and-so is doing early age spay neuter down the street. Now, why aren't you doing it? And they were like, really? Because local vets never talk to each other. And they're like, really? So-and-so's doing it? I was like, yeah, so why don't you do it? I'll bring you some kittens, you do it. And so
kids spaying before 5.
So once they heard that, they were like, oh, okay. So that's how I could get more veterinarians doing early age spay neuters, because I was always comparing one to the other.
I'm trying to read and listen at the same time. There's actually a question in here that's very similar about a group that is only pulling kittens and leaving the mom, and not necessarily spaying her, or they're taking the mom and the neonates and then nursing the kittens and then putting the mother back out. I don't know that we know enough about that situation to really.
Oh, the groups that take the kittens and leave mom behind. Oh yeah. Oh, I know about that. Yeah. That's not uncommon.
Okay.
Yeah, that definitely happens.
Would you suggest a way to approach a group that isn't necessarily acting in a progressive way, or any way to counteract that? Like, could you is there, a suggestion of a way that you could like team up with them to, if you guys trap the mom, we'll take the mom sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I would offer to spay to get the mom done. Offer to pay for the funding to get the mom done. While I mean, trapping the kittens is the easy peasy part. Um, and but I would say, hey, we want to pay to get the mom trapped. Can we collaborate on the trapping so that we can get it done? Because if the kittens are in the trap, they can bait the traps with the kittens to help get that mom. But it is not an uncommon occurrence, and it is very frustrating for those that are full-time volunteer trappers. It drives them bonkers, and I
Mhm.
totally get it. I totally understand it. And even if there was some way for them to, identify that there's that cat still left behind, it's that determination to not leave any cats behind that there are some groups that aren't necessarily that committed to ensuring that they're going to get that last cat, and they're going to just take the easy ones and not necessarily take the deep dive and get them all. And kittens represent adoption money where a feral mom does not.
Yeah. Um, that's actually a interesting point is adoption programs versus spay neuter programs versus mobile clinics. Like, do you have a suggestion? You may have already actually talked about this in terms of like if you're going to start doing something to make the biggest impact, like how would you measure what your biggest impact in your area is going to be, or is it always spay neuter?
Always spay neuter.
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
if we didn't have, if if we had never started, just for our Merrimack River Feline Rescue folks, if we had never started the Catmobiles,
mhm.
we would be in a very different place today than we are now.
Okay. For the better or for
The worse.
okay.
Yeah.
Um, then another question. It's kind of a long one, but I'll try to sum it up. Are there tips for how a bigger organization could help a smaller organization as a way to, eh, kind of access more resources in terms of people and volunteers so that they could cut down on their waiting list? Like how could they help those smaller organizations do more and get more involved so that they're all working as a team on a project rather than but without encroaching on their organization-ness, I guess.
Right, right. So I'll reference an interesting model of the Berkshire Humane Society out in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Um, so they're your larger traditional humane society, and they've never really historically had much of a trap neuter return program, and they partnered with a much smaller TNR group out in Pittsfield, and I think their name is Animal Dreams, if I'm remembering it correctly, and they've partnered to such a degree that they now support a holding area for the TNR cats, and they even let Animal Dreams have their office there, I believe. But yet they're two separate 501c3 entities, but yet they have this commonality overlaying. And obviously Berkshire takes all the friendlies that they get and all the kittens that they get and puts them up for adoption, and then Animal Dreams, takes care of all the TNR, and Berkshire helps with the holding and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's a relationship building thing. So you have to sit down and get to know the management in the larger organization, and you basically both share like what are our pain points. And the larger organizations oftentimes would be like, well, feral cats coming in a trap. Years ago they were euthanizing them. Hopefully now they're doing return to field, but they want to be able to make sure that those cats have some sort of monitoring going on for them, and that's where a smaller TNR group, who are the boots on the ground. That's the thing, is a lot of these humane societies, not if they're not doing like a Pets for Life program, they're they don't have that many boots on the ground. So they like using the little groups that are in the communities that, know all the key players, to really be able to provide them with feedback as to what's going on and knowing what's going on with the community cats and stuff.
Excellent. And then there's a few questions in here about advocacy. So in terms of dealing with the town, the ACO, the powers that be, and getting legislation or ordinances passed, or to encourage ones that are more humane. Do you have suggestions for how to approach town governments or local governments?
Yeah, I have not had the privilege or the honor or whatever for being in on like a whole ordinance change and like dealing with all that wording and all that stuff. Many people used to complain about how in Massachusetts cats really have no rights whatsoever, but that's actually a blessing in a way too, because then we didn't really have any restrictions as to what we did, back in the 90s and stuff. So we, the cats are valued at $35 in Massachusetts. So, we had sort of free reign, but I certainly know in other parts of the country, there's a lot of different ordinances out there. Some of them are enforced, some of them are not enforced. So that also paints a different picture. If it's not enforced, then maybe you just go and do your own thing. But if it is enforced, then you have to really, really go and look at it and see about getting things changed. I mean, I'm sure these ordinances were all done with the best intentions in mind, but they've somewhat backfired. What I approach community cats at the Board of Health level. I seem to think that they are the most responsive to me when I go to city officials, because I believe that if you're saying you're going to reduce your community cat numbers and you're going to get your population of cats vaccinated against rabies and spayed and neutered, and you're not going to have, these mushed kittens on the road, which I would say that to a public official because it's so easy to visualize that as being really gross. And they would then be very active and, helpful to the cause. In some communities, your animal control officer falls under Board of Health, and in other communities, it falls under the police department. I feel like when it's been in the Board of Health, the path to the animal control officer and having their assistance has been easier than when it's been under the police department. That's just been my experience. But I would, have the Board of Health lead you to City Council, which would then lead you to proposing an ordinance change. What I tell officials is that if you let my organization come into your community to build a community program that's going to be self-sustaining, within 3 to 5 years, you're going to see a drastic reduction in the number of free roaming cats in your community. And so I make a promise that you're going to see a big change within 3 to 5 years. I make a statement that if you buy into my program, things are going to change. And it's going to be cheaper. And then they're going to call you up 3 to 5 years later and talk to you about the rats in the community. But that's the next topic.
Absolutely. Are there signs of burnout? So, you have some very dedicated volunteers working for you, and they'll go to the ends of the earth, but they may not know they're burning out, and everybody always feels the urgency to help the cats that they're trying to track or that they're trying to get adopted or what have you. Are there signs that management or, staff could be keeping an eye out for, and suggestions of ways to approach a volunteer who might, you're worried about burning out?
Yeah. So I'm going to first suggest another podcast by a friend of mine, Jennifer Blau, who's been a guest on my show. She has the Compassion Fatigue podcast, and it's a fantastic podcast about folks that have worked with animals and been in the sheltering business. She herself was a shelter worker and experienced burnout, and she started this podcast. So it's the Compassion Fatigue podcast, and it's a great resource to check out. And she also has a workbook called To Find a Starfish, which is a compassion fatigue workbook, which helps you sort of work through the process of what happens when you hit a wall and that kind of thing. So in terms of volunteer, either managing volunteers, being a co-volunteer, managing employees, exhibiting signs of burnout, obviously, lots of emotion and temper, short-temperedness are signs of burnout. And if they are not able to have moments during the week when they are not tied into work, not able to, if you're a foster home coordinator and there's a cell phone that goes with you and you're not able to give it up for a couple of days and be, separated from your fosters, that can easily lead into burnout. If you say, hey, have you taken a vacation recently? And they say, oh, I never take vacations. That's a sign that you're going to be doing burnout. And dealing with it and how to address it with them. If you're not eating well, if you don't look like you're sleeping well, if it's volunteer to volunteer, you can say, hey, I'm sitting down with you as a friend, and I really just want to check in with you because it's impacting other people at the program, and everybody needs to take a break. If it's boss to employee, then you can say, I'm talking to his boss, an employee. One other thing that makes life even easier is if you have either volunteer policies or volunteer guidelines, is mandatory vacations or mandatory breaks. You can have some guidelines in place saying, you must take 3 weeks or 2 weeks away from this, during the course of the year. And address it in your volunteer paperwork and say, we're very much aware. I think foster homes are the silent burnout sources because we're not seeing them. They're 24/7 all the time. I mean, yeah, you're humming, Kristen, because I know you're a foster home, and if you've got a very sickly cat. And then you take another sickly cat. I mean, you do the vicious cycle. By September, I would say half the foster homes at MRFRS could not say a full sentence, during some of our crazy summers, because they'd had so many kittens throughout the summer and they just didn't know, what was going on. So I highly recommend, like, if you foster 2 litters, then you have to take a break for a week or 2 or something. I mean, do not foster all the time. I think that's the worst thing you can do. I mean, I used to, when I was fostering and then I had my own cats and then there were sick cats at the shelter, I can't tell you how many times I would like go into that shower and I would just stay in there for, and half an hour just to get away because it was like the only place that I didn't have any cat meds or litter box or anything. And, you've gotta find a safety zone, definitely. And you also have to realize that there are times that you should not be tied in. So if people aren't doing it voluntarily after a conversation, then I think you should have a guideline or a policy within the organization to encourage rotation, having people rotate out of a foster loop or whatever.
I think Hannah will probably talk about it, but especially with kittens that need to be bottle fed and people have to get up every 4 hours and things like that. I think she's going to do a little bit of talking about compassion fatigue and
Yep.
kitten care. So if you guys have any interest in that, she's our first presentation tomorrow. If I'm
Yep. She's at 10 a.m.
So be here at 10 for that. I see a great suggestion here from Kaylee Kaczynski. The Keep a Positive Stories daily journal. It's her favorite way to remember all the good that the team has done and kind of go back and revisit it on those rough days. And that kind of helps keep the focus of, when you have to, those days that you've dealt with everybody who doesn't think that they need to take care of their cats. You could go back and read that. And that's kind of a nice little reminder of why you do what you do. I think that's a lovely suggestion. There's some question about proposing new programs to shelter management. So if you're a volunteer or you're on the staff and you need to, you see a problem, or you see that there's a better solution to something that you're already doing, are there suggestions of ways to address that with the management of the shelter, and how to get them on board if the idea is a good one?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So if you are thinking about proposing like a program, without knowing what the shelter is like, whether it's big, medium, or small, and what their resources are. I mean, the world is run by money, so it goes back to that like funding statement. Um, if you have a great idea but you don't have a plan, then they're going to shut you down. So you need to prepare a plan, and then I would run it by like your most immediate management. Nothing should be a surprise to anybody too. So you sort of flesh it out, and then um, if it's an organization that has like a development department and all that kind of stuff, then you have to kind of be careful about all that stuff. But if it's a small organization, they're just going to want to know, they're going to want to know how it's going to be funded and how it can be self-sustaining and how it will not be an additional drag on the organization. That's one of the biggest things that I hear with regards to like saying, I want to add a TNR program to the organization, and they're just like, oh, well, we can't take on one more thing. We just can't take on one more thing. And so you have to be a real good salesperson to convince them that it's going to make life easier, not harder.
It might make sense to, would you suggest any kind of preparation that people could do?
Yeah, oh, definitely a proposal format. So it's really, you would be like, tentative name of the program, who'd be responsible for the program. Are there any parties that are interested? Do you already have some volunteers recruited that would help with the program? Is this program ongoing, or is this like an event-oriented program, meaning like I want to run a wellness, a vaccination and microchipping clinic for the local community once a year? Is it an event? And it's just that one thing, and then you like say, hey, I'll get sponsors from local businesses, might get some microchips donated or something like that. So is that the kind of thing you're thinking of, or are you thinking about like, oh, let's create a foster care program that is ongoing? And I also would highly recommend you position it as a pilot program. So you say, hey, we're going to do it for 6 months or 12 months and then reevaluate it, so that then the board or the management doesn't feel like it's something that they're committed to for life.
Let's see. This one I'm going to read word for word because there's some numbers in it. Craig Street Cats in Winnipeg does a comprehensive program and has a 10-year history of reducing numbers 70% in the first 5 years, up to 90% after 10 years. In all places where we have established management, numbers are documented, but the city will not endorse TNR or cat management. Do you have suggestions?
The city will not endorse, but they've been doing it anyway, right?
It sounds like it.
I mean, I don't know why it would be important for them to necessarily endorse it. I mean, I guess I would say, if you're doing it anyway, and it's in the culture of the community, is I mean, endorsement's sort of like icing on the cake, but it wouldn't drive me crazy that they're not like endorsing it.
Mhm.
It's I unless I could see some significant benefit from it. I they're not working against you. They're not going against it at all. But so I guess I'd have to find out a little bit more about the backstory to find out how important is an endorsement. I mean, I can get a letter of recommendation from the head of the Board of Health saying how successful the program has been, but I mean, even in the communities that we were in Newburyport, I mean, we didn't necessarily get like a public endorsement. I mean, we've had like sort of like, good declarations. I guess we had a declaration from the mayor, but I mean, I don't think we really used it to much of anything.
They're sending a little bit of follow-up.
Good.
in this particular area, anyone doing TNR can be charged or fined. So that's why they're
Oh, okay. So
um,
that's a situation where the ordinance needs to be undone.
mhm,
So there's an ordinance that needs to be reworked, and that's an advocacy issue.
mhm.
And I guess I'd have to ask more questions about the players and um, how has the approach been made? Has it been approached by businesses, or has it is the head of the Chamber of Commerce approaching the city officials, or is it more just the shelters, and is there a unified group approaching, or is it just one by one? So I guess I'd have to understand more on the history. I'd say Katie Lisnick is a huge resource with regards to the advocacy issue. So you might want to, she's going to talk about advocacy tomorrow. So maybe listen in on that and then follow up with Katie too, because she's a much greater resource in that area than I am.
Okay. There are, let's see, I've got two more questions. There's a there's a situation where somebody's talking about, I think this probably falls into the public education category of things, where they have repeat offenders coming to the shelter and just dropping off litter after litter, and they're not spaying or neutering their source of those litters. How do you feel about either cutting them off? Do you just keep taking the litters? What's your feeling on that if it was you?
So repeat that scenario for me again. There was a person who's just giving you the kittens and having litter and litter. Is that what you're just saying?
So they're calling them a repeat offender. So
Yep.
I'm gathering that it's a situation where they take in kittens, and somebody will have a cat that just keeps having kittens, and they keep bringing in the kittens to the shelter, but they're not doing anything to prevent the next
Mhm.
litter, and
Mhm.
just bringing that litter in because their method of getting rid of the kittens is bringing it to the shelter.
Yeah. Do whatever you can do to get that mom spayed. So if you have to buy him a new car, buy him a new car. I mean, so many places offer, we'll take the kittens if we get the mom spayed, you bring the mom in to get spayed. But it may involve obviously even more than that because they're near hoarders. They're what I call, they are hoarders or near hoarders. They will be hoarders if you're not able to, bring them the kittens and stuff. The other thing is ask them to become a foster home. And so then you become their supplier of kittens, and then you have more control about what their scenario is like. And obviously you have to, evaluate the living situation and all that kind of stuff. So, maybe it's not a foster home, but maybe it's like, I don't know. You can think I've thought of different other scenarios of, even asking them to collect for your yard sale. We had one of our former hoarders. She became a great collector for yard sale stuff from her friends and stuff. So her friends that used to give her cats gave her stuff for the yard sale, and they gave her linens for the shelter and stuff. And so we started trying to find a different way to kind of feed that passion, and keep her close to the fold. That's for sure, definitely her or him, whoever it is.
Julie Jacobson's just chiming in with establishing a last litter policy. So offering to fix the parents for free. And the caveat is you won't take any more litters from them if they don't fix the parents.
Yeah, but then they become hoarders. They just end up keeping them all, and then they just kind of grow and grow and grow. And so it becomes, you're going to end up dealing with it then when it's like 30 or 40 cats.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
So you got to play with them all the time anyway. I mean, like meaning the people, you've got to be their friends all the time because there's, you know, there's some mental stuff going on there. So we end up having to be therapists in many, many ways and best friends to a lot of people that we would never thought we would be best friends to.
Yes. Let's see. Julie also says a threat often works.
I know. Julie, you're so tough. You are just a tough nugget.
Julie has some excellent, if you guys who are listening in want to know more about Julie and what Julie does, she's the queen of spay neuter. And she's got a few podcasts that Stacy's done interviews with her. So you will probably enjoy them quite a bit. She's very funny. Uh,
Yeah. So I have a quick question here for Michelle Hoffman. If you're still out there, I missed your address and I couldn't find it. I've been scrolling around trying to find it. So Michelle Hoffman, if you're still out there, just retype in your address for me, please.
I think that's about it.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, we're already at 8 o'clock, boys and girls, so this is fantastic. This has been the best Ask Stacy show ever, and if Lisa Finkel's still on the line, she'll be chuckling on that one because I have done a couple of Ask Stacy shows with Lisa. So these questions are fantastic. They're great, and you're going to have an opportunity for more questions tomorrow. The way that the presentations work is the folks will be doing their slide presentations, and we'll probably have like 10 or 15 minutes at the end of each presentation for questions, and it'll be themed in a similar way to what Kristen was doing tonight. And I hope you found tonight beneficial. Kristen, I don't know if you want to close us out.
We're going to be getting back together at 10 o'clock
Yep.
tomorrow.
That's
For Hannah Shaw. If you need any information on the order of events, there's an itinerary on the website. So you'd go to onlinecatconference.com and just hit the itinerary button and it will take you to all the information. If you've enjoyed this and you happen to have people who also want to join us tomorrow, we are leaving the registration open until Sunday. There isn't a discount on it per se, but if anybody else wants to join us, feel free to send them the link. And somebody had asked if the question box will be open for the other presenters. Yes, the question box will be open. Stacy or I will be monitoring it. The chances are that you won't be talking directly to the presenter until the end, and we'll kind of do what we did today. And people are asking about recordings. So
Yep.
there will be recordings and PDF downloads shortly after the conference is over. We need a little recovery time. So if people want to go back and rewatch things, we'll make sure that everybody gets access to that for a while. I know some presenters would prefer to have their information only up for a limited amount of time. We'll let you know which ones those are. And I believe that's about it. We're gonna get ready to learn, and we'll get back together tomorrow.
See you all tomorrow at 10. Thanks so much.